right, I'd like to welcome you to the Past Business Analytics virtual chapter. This is probably our 13th or 14th session of the year. We have a website. We go under bavc.sequelpass.org. And we also have a Twitter handle, which is PastBAVC, so you can join us out there. Also to note is that we have another session on touring your data with Power Map, which will Devin Knight will be providing that on 9/19, and then we have a special treat from on 10/3 from Michael Upchurch on predictive analytics using in database models. And then I would really like you to join me at the Past Summit. I will try to send some invites out for maybe a get-together for the Past BA chapter. And then on 10/24, as kind of a wrap-up to the Past Summit, we're going to have an interview with Andrew Brust on his outlook on business analytics. The other thing is I had sent out an email reminder in there. Microsoft is asking our input by September 13th on our feedback on Power View. Sandy Rivas from Microsoft presented about a month ago, and she's very interested in your feedback. So go ahead, take that opportunity to do that. I'll send out another reminder, and I'll post the actual survey on Twitter as well. And a final reminder about the Past Summit. If you'd like to get $200 off, if you use the code BAVC, you'll get that $200 off, and we might even get some good, cool items to give away at our chapter meetings. That's about it for community news. I'll get on to today's meeting. We have Microsoft Power BI and Office 365, your first road to it, with Kevin Goff. So Kevin, I'm going to actually hand this off to you and let you tell all the folks about yourself. So let's do this.
Okay. And looks like I'm sharing my screen now. If you can just let me know.
I can see your screen. Okay,
great. We will get started. So thank you all for attending. As Melissa said, my name is Kevin Goff, and the topic for today, this is an introductory session on Microsoft Power BI for Office 365. Just a little bit about me, the proverbial 30 seconds of shameless promotion here. I'm a SQL Server MVP. I've been in the industry since 1987, and I write a regular column for Code Magazine called The Baker's Dozen, basically 13 productivity tips, usually on a SQL Server BI topic. Now, Code Magazine is known more as a .NET and general application developer magazine, but they have a lot of other topics, including a coverage of SQL Server Business Intelligence, which I usually hit. So if you take a look at any of our articles over the last couple of years, they're usually dealing with SSIS, SSAS, SSRS, data warehousing, that sort of thing. I've been involved in a couple of books. The only thing you need to write down here is, first of all, my website is just kevinesgoff.net, and my email address, if you want to send me an email, is kgoff@kevinesgoff.net. I also do some SQL BI webcasts, and oftentimes they're sort of a live version of my Code Magazine articles, and just using that brand of Baker's Dozen, actually call it BDBI Radio, short for Baker's Dozen Business Intelligence Radio.com. It's webcasts, again, covering things like SSIS, SSRS, MDX programming, building OLAP cubes, that sort of thing. So let's get started here. So I'll move to the next slide. All right, so today's topic is Power BI for Office 365. Now, this session is sandwiched in between some sessions that have been going on dealing with some of the different components of Power BI. For instance, I believe one of the prior sessions dealt with either Power Query or Power Maps, and a future session is going to deal with some of the other components of Power BI for Office 365. This is a high-level session, very much a beginner session, that sort of talks about the environment as a whole. I'm going to describe the general capabilities and some of the limitations, and also talk about some of the components, but I'm not going to get into any one area very heavily. This is a kind of session that if you're not sure what's in Power BI and you just would sort of like to get an overview and maybe some web links and some references that can allow you to dive into specific areas, well, that's what this session is about. So I was glad to hear that 85% of the attendees have not really looked at Power BI for Office 365 yet, because that's who this is intended for. If you work with it some, you probably won't get as much out of it because you would have been through some of the learning curve. Now, as Melissa said, the prior webinars on this general topic are up on the website here in the slide deck. It's bavc.sequelpass.org. Now, first of all, some URLs if you want to get some of the information from Microsoft about Power BI for Office 365. I've got two links in here. One is a general link that really talks about Microsoft BI strategy as a whole, and obviously Power BI for Office 365 is one that's getting a great deal of attention. So I've got a general link here. I'll just quickly go to it. Certainly not going to read through the link, but just to basically show it, there is some information down at the bottom about Microsoft's overall BI strategy, and then a link for the Power BI for Office 365 preview. If I actually take that link, well, that's the same as what I've got back here in the slide deck for the second one, to register for the preview. The preview is actually, if I take this option to register for it, the preview is going to be available for public release later in the summer. It's, still summer here, at least until the end of September. So at some point in the near future, this will be available. Now, for right now, if you want to register to get a notification for it the minute it becomes available, you can sign up with your email address, and you'll eventually get a link when you have the ability to create an actual Office BI for Office 365 site. So you can sign up for it, and when it becomes available for real, you'll get a notification. So again, I've got these links to the slide deck, and I've sent the slides to Melissa, so they at some point after the session will be up on the site. Now, first of all, what is in Power BI for Office 365? Well, you can ask 10 different people who work with this the question, and you might get 10 different responses. This is my personal perspective on it. The way to look at it is that there's two major components to Power BI for Office 365. The first is a set of Excel add-ins. Now, some of these you probably have heard of because they've actually been available for a while now, and some of them are newer add-ins. Those people are probably familiar with, or at least have heard of, Power Pivot. Well, this is an add-in for Excel that allows you to take relational data, different data feeds, and use some of the interface in Excel to essentially create the equivalent of an analytic cube right there in Excel, and then build pivot tables and pivot charts against it, and then go publish it somewhere. I'm going to give just a very brief demonstration of that in just a little while here. Well, there's also Power View. Power View is one of the newer kids in the block. This is a data visualization tool. It's actually built by it's part of the reporting services umbrella. But unlike reporting services, which is really more of a developer tool, Power View is more of a business user, power user tool to create what I call image reports and charts. And that's just a name that I use. It's not a formal name. When I say image reports or charts, I mean things that occupy maybe one or two screens of information. If you think about a traditional reporting services report, that might be 10 pages, 15 pages, or maybe even 100 pages with some navigation capabilities to go across the pages. Well, typically the type of output that you would create in Power View would be summarizing information that can fit on maybe one or two or a small handful of screen areas, not a full-blown report. And I'll give just a very, very brief look at Power View. Power View is something that you could actually spend hours showing some of the pretty cool features in it. Well, then there are two new tools that are available. Now, one of them was actually made available back in the summer under a different name. It was called GeoFlow. In order to bring the names in line with the overall branding here, they changed the name to PowerMap. Now, a little bit of history here. If you've worked with reporting services for the last couple of years, you know that reporting services has had some mapping capabilities in it. You could provide it information on geography as well as sales information. You could build heat maps. You could build maps that would plot sales in different parts of the country with different markers. And that certainly had some nice capabilities, but it really suffered from a lack of flexibility. It was really hard to really navigate within the map. So it was sort of static. You could generate a map, and the initial image might look nice, but it was really hard to navigate and zoom in and out. Well, PowerMap sort of picks up where some of that functionality left off. It allows you to create some pretty impressive 3D geographic visualizations that they're powered by Bing Maps under the hood. I'm going to give you a couple of links at the end to some pretty nice demos that are up on YouTube, either by people who work with Microsoft or independent people who built some pretty impressive demos of what's in PowerMap. And then there's a new one that for some environments is going to almost be a game changer. That term tends to get used a lot, but in this case, definitely so. A new capability, a new add-in called Power Query that allows you to go out and search from, amongst other things, public sources. Now, a lot of demos that have been built and published will do things like open up a public source of maybe information on medical information that's available to the public, or other types of demographics that are available to the public, and you can actually create mashups and query from these public sources and use some English-like querying capability. This is a pretty powerful capability, and it's also one where I have a link to a demonstration that'll show it more in detail. So the first set of what's in Power BI for Office 365 are add-ins for Excel. Now, if that's all that you want to use this for, if you have no interest in using the cloud or SharePoint, you can certainly tap into this functionality and sort of share spreadsheets internally in your corporate intranet by putting them on shared drives or emailing them around or whatever. But there's a second component to this that really extends the capability of Excel further and into the hands of more people, and that's making this Excel content available using the cloud services that Microsoft provides on an Office 365 site that is designed specifically for Power BI content. So the Office 365 capability that allows you to create create your own portals that are hosted by Microsoft Cloud Services. There's also a new Power BI site. That's the one that I mentioned a few minutes ago that you can sign up for, that offers a cloud-based version of, amongst other things, some SharePoint portals for sharing Excel content. Now, it's not the full-blown version of SharePoint Enterprise that you might be used to if you have SharePoint Enterprise in your company, but it certainly is enough to render this information and make it available to many different people in your organization, not just on a desktop or on a laptop, but also on different mobile devices. Power BI for Office 365, another big key feature here, is mobile BI device support. So if you've got some kind of a Windows 8 device, a Windows RT device, or an iPad running iOS, you're going to be able to view these visualizations that were initially created in Excel, these Power Pivot, Power View, Power Map, and Power Query capabilities. You'll be able to view them using different mobile devices like the ones I've referenced here, using HTML5. So in a nutshell, that's what's in Power BI for Office 365. The Excel add-ins plus the capability to publish this up to the cloud and then point your mobile devices to it. Now, there are also, within the cloud services, there are also some data management services, some data management features so that IT people can control the data sources that get published up to Power BI sites as well as the user access. So if you think about a traditional SharePoint application where under SharePoint Central Administration, you set up user rights, you set up user licenses, you set up your data sources and any rules for republishing or scheduling refreshes or updates to the data. There's a data management gateway that's part of the Office 365 cloud services so that IT can control it. So kind of loosely speaking, it's like a stripped down, simplified version of some of the things that you might do in SharePoint Central Administration. All right, now the best way to describe this at a high level is to think about the environments that right now, the traditional SharePoint 2010 or 2013 environments, and I've certainly worked in a number of these, and I'm sure some of the attendees have as well, where we might have business users, power users, and maybe even developers who sometimes will do this. They'll take information from SQL Server or possibly from Oracle or maybe other data feeds, and they'll utilize Excel and some of the capabilities that have been Excel for a while. But one of the things we want to keep in mind is that some of these add-ins, and specifically Power Pivot specifically, has been in Excel as an add-in going back to the spring of 2010. Actually, if you go back further, Power Pivot was being demonstrated in the market back in the fall of 2009. So Power Pivot is certainly not a new feature, although it's certainly been enhanced over the years. So different technical or semi-technical people would take data from different data sources, including SQL Server, relational data, or even data from flat files, and then mash it up and build Power Pivot content in Excel, and then push it up to a SharePoint Enterprise server. Now in that SharePoint Enterprise server, you're obviously having a DBA or some other IT administrator who is maintaining the enterprise server, maybe building other development modules against it. Well, they have set up site collections so that the technical or semi-technical people can push that content up into a site collection and specifically into a document library that that can be accessible to your other users within the company who want to interact with that data. So this data in SQL Server might have contained semi-synthesized order information or cost information or pricing or whatever data is of particular interest to a company. Maybe mash it up and create some analytic pivot tables and pivot charts in Excel, push it up to SharePoint in specific document libraries, and then make it available to 10 users. And this works and certainly works very well, a capability that has been around for a few years now. But for some organizations, it presents some challenges. Well, first of all, if you've been involved in a SharePoint Enterprise environment, you know that the management of SharePoint is certainly has a learning curve associated with it, not to mention the fact that you're talking about SharePoint licensing as well. Now, for some organizations, the additional functionality of SharePoint, beyond just the capabilities to render business intelligence data, are so important to companies that they purchase the SharePoint license and that's their mode of operation. But other organizations might want to use just those aspects of SharePoint that allow people to render BI data into a portal and then share it with others. So a full-blown SharePoint Enterprise server might be overkill for some people. And so, well, that really leads to a what if. And that what if is, what if this whole SharePoint piece here, what if this entire enterprise server could exist in the cloud? We've all seen the television commercials of going to the cloud. Well, what if we could chase that entire server up to the cloud and treat that as an external portal where we could render the Excel content, even some of the newer Excel add-ins, and then not only allow the same users to get to that information, but maybe also allow mobile users to access it with a Surface tablet or with an iPad or some other supporting mobile device. So, what if we could have that? What if we could still have our enterprise database, or maybe even that database is in the cloud for all we know, use some of the newer capabilities in Excel like Power Pivot and Power View and Power Map and so forth, and pushed it up to the cloud so that users could hit it. Well, that's really what Power BI for Office 365 is all about. That Office 365 site, managed as a cloud service by Microsoft, contains, among other things, I'm oversimplifying this maybe a little bit, but you can think of it as a very stripped down version of SharePoint. It's almost, if I could use this term, like SharePoint Lite, with simpler management features that allow us to push these pivot tables, these pivot charts, this content in Power View or Power Maps or whatever we happen to have, push it up to a site collection that's managed in the cloud, obviously with a simpler management structure, so that corporate users can get to it either through a normal web browser on their desktop or laptop or through a mobile device. Well, that is essentially what Power BI for Office 365 is all about. We have the two components, the add-ins for Excel, and again, you can just simply take that and utilize it internally and share the spreadsheets on a shared server or email or whatever. Or you can actually set up an Office 365 site that can take Power BI content and render it to end users. Now, I mentioned that this is you can think of it as a stripped down version of SharePoint, or as I call it, SharePoint Lite. Well, as such, there are going to be some limitations, some restrictions. So moving to the next slide here. Some of those restrictions are the fact that that SharePoint piece that's up in your Office 365 site is not going to have all the same features that you would see in the full-blown version of SharePoint Enterprise. A particular service application that's of interest to me, I've done a lot of work with it for clients and done a lot of training on it. A personal favorite product of mine is Performance Point Services. Well, that's not available in Office 365. So again, you're not going to get all the functionality of this in SharePoint Enterprise, although truthfully you can use some of the Power BI features that are in the Excel add-ins to create some of the content that you might normally see in Performance Point Services like KPI dashboard. You can actually simulate a lot of that functionality within some of the existing add-ins in Excel. Now, some of the other limitations are the size of the workbook uploads. At the moment, and don't know if this will change, or at least as of now, the maximum workbook upload is 250 megabytes. Now, something to keep in mind, you might think that that's 250 megabytes is pretty small. One thing to keep in mind is that when you create a Power Pivot data source in Excel from SQL data or from other information, you're utilizing some of the compression capabilities that are available in the underlying engine that's known as XVelocity. Power Pivot contains an underlying technique called XVelocity that takes data and builds basically a column store out of it. So in the traditional fact dimension structure on which you might base a lot of this data, it's taking duplicate information and compressing it, and so you might, depending upon the type of data that you're working with, you might get a compression ratio of 8:1 or even higher. So that 250 megabytes is based upon what winds up getting compressed. So the actual source of data could be as much as 8 times beyond that and still be able to fit it into a workbook. But still, you obviously can't take an entire corporate database, put it into one Power Pivot spreadsheet, and push that up to Office 365. It's simply going to be too large. So there is a limit here. The compressed workbook has to be can't be more than 250 megabytes. So again, there are some limitations, but for people who are just looking to push a lot of the content that we can now create in Excel up to a portal that's certainly less expensive than the licensing of SharePoint, then this will work fine. Okay, well, where do we start? Now, I'm going to pull up a few demos here at the end, but as far as where do we start with Excel? Well, you want to load up on the Excel add-ins for Excel 2013. And again, they are Power Pivot, Power View, Power Maps, and also Power Query. Now, you might not necessarily need all of these. you'll probably want, if you want to use this at all, you're going to want Power Pivot and you're going to want Power View. Now, depending upon what type of analytics you want to build, and maybe Power Maps or even Power Query will be important to you. Certainly all of these are have strong capabilities, but Power Pivot and Power View are the ones that across the masses are the ones we see that are the most popular. Well, Power Pivot is a free add-in. Here's the link for it. You can pull it down from the Microsoft site. Now, Power View is actually an add-in. The Power View report capability is an add-in that comes with Excel 2013. It's also part of SQL Server 2012. Now, in addition, if you want to get Power Maps and Power Query, here are the URLs for those. And there's some getting started information that's up on MSDN for getting started with Power Query and with Power Maps. If I take a quick look at one of the sites up here, there's a getting started that's on MSDN for Power Query and Power Map, along with some links to some demos that are particularly impressive. So again, just trying to make some information available to people to get started with these. Now, if you have been watching the competing products, you probably have heard of products like ClickView and Tableau. Now, there are other self-service BI tools that are out there that allow the power users to take mashups of data and create some pretty impressive pivot tables and pivot charts. There's certainly some functionality that you might see in one product that you won't see in another product, and vice versa. So truthfully, if you take a full detailed feature list of all these products, certainly some are both supersets and subsets of each other. But there's no question, and people who have seen all the products will definitely acknowledge this, that things like Power Pivot, Power View are definitely killer add-ins that allow Microsoft to compete very well with some of these competing products like ClickView and Tableau. Certainly back in 2010, people looked at ClickView and said, wow, this is a fantastic tool for power users to create analytic cubes without needing OLAP developers. You know, what does Microsoft have? Well, what does Microsoft have to compete with that? Well, Power Pivot and now Power View definitely allow Microsoft to compete very, very strongly in this space. So you can pull down those add-ins. They are free to use with Excel 2013. Well, how do we get started with a web portal? If I actually come over here to my browser, I've got a web portal that I've set up, my own Office 365 site that has just a basic test document library. This is my own Office 365 site, managed up in the cloud, and this looks a lot like a SharePoint 2013 site, except I'm not managing on my local server. It's actually being managed through Office 365 up in the cloud. And I've got a spreadsheet here that I've pushed up that has some Power Pivot and Power View content that we're going to look at shortly. Well, how did I build this? How did I sign up for this? How did I set this up? Well, back a couple slides ago, I mentioned that the full-blown Power BI for Office 365 Preview isn't yet available. All right, so how did I get this then? Well, you can actually still today sign up for Office 365 and publish much of this content, not all of it, but much of this up to a 365 site to begin with. And when the full-blown Power BI for Office 365 Preview is available, you'll be able to set up a web portal for that as well. But at least for today, there's a link where you can go to sign up for Office 365. So if I follow this link, you can go sign up for Office 365, and specifically what I signed up for was an Enterprise E3 license that allows me to utilize a lot of the SharePoint Portal capabilities inside an Office 365 site. Now, we obviously see the pricing right here, $20 user license fee per month, but you can try it for 30 days. And here's the really nice thing. You can try it for 30 days without even providing credit card information. You know, a lot of sites that offer the 30 days, you have to put your credit card information right away. And of course, if you forget on the 30th day, on the 31st day, you wind up getting charged. Well, you do not have to provide your credit card information just to try it out for 30 days. That was a great decision on their part. So in the Try Now, you just simply sign up. Now I already have one in here, so I'm getting this message, but you can sign up for a new one, and it simply prompts you for your name, your address, your telephone number, an email contact, and which type of Office 365 site do you want. The one that I created was an Enterprise E3 site that contains, among other things, a portal for SharePoint. So you provide that information, and you're given a site name as a result. Well, then you wind up getting a management portal. So right now I'm looking at my management portal, and it's https Kevin S. Goff, that's the name of my site here, -admin.sharepoint.com. So I'm actually looking at a SharePoint portal up in Office 365 where I can push Power BI. I can at least push some Power BI content up here. Now, once I've got this set up, my regular URL here is just simply kevinsgoff.sharepoint.com. So that becomes available the minute you register that site. Now, if you're familiar with a basic SharePoint site collection, you know that you have different types of document libraries. If I go to Documents right now, or even if I go back home, well, there are different types of document libraries that I can set up here. I set up just a very, very basic document library called Test, and then I took some Power Pivot and Power View content from Excel and push it up here. I'm going to go back a step. I'm going to go back to Excel here. Now in Excel, what I did to start with. Now I'm not going to walk through how I created this. Obviously other demos are going through this in detail, but the basic level, what I did was I took some data from AdventureWorks, the Microsoft demo database I think most people are familiar with. I took some demo tables from AdventureWorks, from their data warehouse, their data mart demo database, and I pulled in a couple of tables. I pulled in the reseller fact table. I pulled in the sales quota table, which has quotas by year and by employee. I brought in the employee dimension, the date dimension, the reseller, and the geography dimension, as well as the product hierarchy that goes category, subcategory, and product. Now, those tables already had primary key, foreign key relationships in them. So all I had to do was just create a data source here in Excel, in a Power Pivot window, point to these tables, and it brings in the relationships. Now, the end game was to have in my demo here, sort of a two tab Excel sheet that I could push up to that Office 365 site. Now, one of them here is something that you might see on a basic KPI scorecard that has sales by employee. Now I've got the employee email address here. Sales by employee for a particular time period, the quota, their percent of quota, a KPI that compares the sales with respect to the quota, and also the percent of quota for last year, and then how they're trending. So as we take a look at any example here, we got Jose here. Jose's sales for 2007 is a little over $4 million. His quota was $5.1 billion, so he's at 81% of quota. Well, maybe we have a rule that says if you're at least 85% of your quota or higher, that's good. If you're 75 to 85, that's okay, and anything below 75 is not good. So with that rule and a KPI that's back in that Power Pivot model that I'll go back to a minute ago, with that rule in place, we can set up a KPI. So here Jose is doing okay at 80%. Well, last year, because we might want to compare this to the same time period a year ago, he was at 85%. So his percent with his sales with respect to the quota, it's down a little bit. So we're trending downward. And then we have Jillian here, who was at 83% of the quota. Well, last year Jillian was at 80%, so she's trending upward. Now, again, this is something you might see in Performance Point Services KPI Scorecard. This is also something you could create in reporting services with a little bit of work. Well, you can do it in Excel as well. And there's a visual slicer down here where if I want to take a look at data for 2008 instead of 2007 or whatever. So that's one piece of information that I could create in Excel using a Power Pivot data source underneath. Well, there's also Power View, and Power View is again a relatively new data visualization tool. Functionality-wise, it's a subset of reporting services, but it has some nice visualization capabilities. Now, I've just got one example here that scratches the surface of the surface. If you've been to any Microsoft demos dealing with Excel and dealing with Power View, you've probably seen some pretty sophisticated scatter charts that might actually play over a series of data with some interactive capabilities. I've built just an extremely simple chart here, but it does demonstrate a few of the Power View capabilities. For instance, I've got a tile up here for years, so I can take a look at sales for 06 or 07 or 08. Well, that was just simply involved by taking from the list of available fields over here the fiscal year and making a tile by out of it, which I've already done. And I've also taken the product category name and made a filter out of that. Now right now I'm looking just at bikes. I could obviously click the drop down here and I could take a look at bikes and clothing. And the chart refreshes, not by much, but the chart refreshes to reflect that. And I've got the sales across the bottom here for each country within the year. Again, very, very simple. Now, in Power View, you can have multiple charts, multiple pages here, and construct something in almost a storyboard fashion. So you might create 3 charts that successively go into more detail or more summarization that maybe tell a story. Again, other demonstrations that are available on the web cover Power View in more detail. This is just one very, very simple example. Now, both of these are utilizing both this employee sales pivot table with KPIs and this Power View report are both using this Power Pivot database under the hood. Now, in Power Pivot, if I go to the data view, you can create calculations and you can build KPIs, sort of like what you can do in the parent product, if you will, called Analysis Services. Analysis Services allows you to build KPIs, allows you to build on-the-fly calculations. Power Pivot is sort of a simplified version of Analysis Services. It has some of the same functionality you've seen in Analysis Services. It just simply renders it in a slightly easier fashion to consume and to be able to create things. So I've got a calculation here for percent of quota that is just simply the sum of the sales amount from the reseller area divided by the sales quota. And I built a KPI out of that. If I right-click here and take a look at the KPI settings, well, I've got a rule in here that anything 85% or better is good, 75, 85 is okay, and anything below 75 is not good. So back in the runtime version, if I hop back over here, that runtime version for the status is actually reading from this rule. Well, we also had a trend here. Well, in order to implement a trend, we have to calculate the percent of quota for the same time period a year ago. Now, again, other demos can get in this in greater detail, but we've got a Power Pivot formula, otherwise known as a DAX formula, DAX being the programming language for Power Pivot, that takes the percent of quota for the same period last year based upon the date dimension in order to come up with the percent of quota re-render for the same time period a year ago. And then we can have a trend that simply subtracts the percent of quota now from a year ago, and then a KPI trend that returns either a 1, 0, or -1, depending upon whether we're up or down compared to last year. So that's how we get the 2 KPIs out of here, both for the current year as well as for the comparison period. You could take a look at how a KPI scorecard is built in Performance Point services or in other tools, and you're going to see some of the same characteristics here. So these are some of the types of things that we could do in Excel using some of these add-ins. Again, talking about this at a very, very high level, but the point is that we can create these using the add-ins in Excel, point them to whatever database we want to point to, whether it's a SQL Server database or an Oracle database or maybe feeds from a web service or whatever. Create the mashups in Power Pivot and then render something like this. Well, once we built this and we maybe have saved it to a local drive, well, the next thing is, how do we get it up here into this Office 365 site? Now, this reference to the spreadsheet here, that is the spreadsheet that I had locally. It was pushed up to the Office 365 site. If I actually click here, now this will probably take a second or two. I haven't interacted with it yet since the last time I saved it up, so it will take a few seconds possibly to load. And I basically see that that same pivot table with the KPI scorecards and the visual slicer here. And so I'll pick a different time period. I'll pick 2007. And this spreadsheet updates to reflect those numbers. So the same interaction that I had back in Excel, and the same interaction you would have if you push this up to your own SharePoint site, you now get with Office 365. But I don't need to install or really manage SharePoint. A lot of it is done through the cloud services. Same thing with this Power View report. If I go to the Power View report, again, there wasn't much to it. Well, I get the same navigation capabilities here to look at these sales by country across years, and to be able to pick different filters. So if I want to do this for all products, or maybe just for clothing or whatever, obviously the data here updates accordingly. Now, I do want to stress this. This is based upon the current Office 365 E3 Enterprise site site portal that I've got set up. There are certain features in Power BI that I would not be able to render up here. When the Power BI preview actually becomes available to the public, then people will be able to create a site and push any kind of Power BI content up here. So notice how I haven't really covered anything dealing with Power Maps or with Power Query. Obviously, other demos are going to cover that, and that type of content you'll be able to push up into an Office 365 for Power BI site. So kind of in a transition state at the moment here, because the full-blown preview isn't available to masses yet, but it will be pretty shortly. Okay, let me come back to my slide deck here. So that's what's involved if you want to set this up today. You can actually go to the URL that I've got referenced here, and you can create a trial version for 30 days. And then you've seen the price that's available if you want to continue to use that for real. And right now you can have a stripped down version of SharePoint, the full-blown Power BI capability to publish any kind of Power BI content from any of the Excel add-ins, not just Power Pivot or Power View, will be available a little bit later. Now, also, and I threw this in because there's been a little bit of interest in this. For Windows 8 users, there is a Power BI app from the Microsoft Store that actually allows you to take the content that's up in an Office 365 Power BI site and actually take a look at it on the desktop. So if you didn't necessarily have Excel, but you'd like to be able to interact and look at this kind of content off of a Windows 8 desktop, there is actually a free app for the Microsoft Store. It's a Power BI app for Windows 8. That does require Power BI for Office 365 account to be able to interact with it. So you basically download this app and you point it to whatever your site happens to be, and then you can actually view the content from an Office 365 site on the Windows 8 desktop. Okay, actually, probably going to finish with a few minutes to spare here. Some definitely recommended links if you want to follow along with more information here, or at least stay up to date with some of the new news that's coming out regarding Power BI as well as the individual components. First of all, if you don't know this name, I definitely recommend keeping track of his blog. Chris Webb is just a prolific writer in the areas of analysis services, OLAP, the tabular model, Power Pivot, Power BI. This I don't know how he gets any sleep because he's involved in so many things. SQL Server MVP, really great guy, does a lot of blogging, and I've got 2 links here of different content that he's been blogging about on his site. It's cwebbi.wordpress.com, and you can obviously just navigate through his blog and find these 2 entries, but I've got 2 in particular. He's got a news roundup where he just sort of summarizes the news that's been going on the last couple of weeks, and he's also got some random thoughts that were published back a little bit earlier in the summer on Power BI, and he's been updating those comments as new information comes out. So definitely recommend reading him in general. If you're involved in the SQL Server Business Intelligence area and you haven't really yet taken a look at his books, because he's written a couple of books, or his blog, I highly, highly recommend what he's written. This guy is a combination of incredible technical knowledge and a lot of common sense. Great writer, great person to have in the industry. There is a good walkthrough of the Power BI for Office 3. We're talking about having a embarrassing typo in here. That should be Office 365, not 265. That was a slip of the keyboard there. But there's a YouTube video that actually walks through creating a Power BI for Office 365 site. Now I've got another good getting started link here from Microsoft. Also, if you attend conferences or community sessions in the Mid-Atlantic, there's a Microsoft consultant who lives, I believe, in the New Jersey area. His name is AJ Mee. He's a great guy. I've talked to him several times. He's got a very good set of YouTube videos, one in particular on some of the same content that I've covered here, creating a mashup of information in Power Pivot and pushing it up to an Office 365 site. Also, this is one I just discovered. This one, Julie. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. Julie Cosmerno, otherwise known as MS SQL Girl, has some good blog entries on, particularly on Power Map, but on the entire topic in general. And also, and this name almost needs no introduction. If you've never seen Amir talk, he's just a bundle of information and a bundle of energy as well. He has one of the most entertaining. I'm not going to even pull it up here. I won't spoil the surprise. He has one of the most entertaining videos I've ever seen on Power BI that focuses on some of the Power Query capabilities, where he actually takes some public source of information on top 40 songs over the years, and actually creates a data mashup and creates a visualization out of it. So I've got a link here if you want to see some of the really cool capabilities that are available in Power BI and specifically in Power Query. This is definitely one to take a look at. So this is kind of strange for me. Normally I'm normally at the time I finish, I still have about 10 minutes left to go, and in this case finishing 10 minutes early. So going to take a look at any if anyone has any questions. We had decided to save the questions for the end, but if anybody has any questions, take a look at the question queue here. And don't see any yet. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to post them here. Again, this is a very top line presentation, but hopefully gives you a little bit of an idea of what's involved with Power BI for Office 365. Again, the way I often position this is that this is a way to get some of the same capabilities that enterprise scenarios will demonstrate, where you can take Excel content, push it up to a SharePoint site. Well, Power BI for Office 365 offers some of that same capability. Again, coming back up to my site collection here, this team site that I've set up is being run under Office 365, and it looks a lot like a SharePoint document library. And really it is. It's just simply being managed through cloud services, and not a thing that I have to deal with. So, Melissa, I don't see any unless anyone were posted to you, I don't see any questions on here, but that really concludes the presentation. Again, wanted to keep it very high level. Put my contact information back up here. If anybody wants to shoot me an email with any questions after the fact, my email address is kgoff@kevinsgoff.net. I'll just keep this up here if want to send me any questions.
Hey, Kevin, we do have one question up here.
Sure.
It is, do you know if the HTML5 capabilities are going to be made available outside of SharePoint in the cloud?
Made available outside of SharePoint in the cloud?
Right.
Was that the question?
Mm-hmm.
Outside of SharePoint, I don't know for 100% fact. The way it's been positioned is that things like Power View, where you're talking about a pretty sophisticated level of graphics, that's usually been the context where the HTML5 support has been talked about. The big thing has been the ability to consume Power View content in particular, because that's one where you have a pretty high level of interaction, and also with things like Power Map. The context has been being able to view that content using HTML5. Well, that usually winds up showing up within SharePoint document libraries. So the best answer I can give is kind of through the old transitive association. Yeah, it's really through SharePoint.
Alrighty, I don't see any further questions. I'll give a couple about 30 seconds, and then we'll wrap up. Kevin, I really appreciated your session. This gave a lot of base information, and I'll be putting the slides out shortly, as well as the recording. This was great. We had about 54 folks show up on the meeting.
Yeah, and one other thing, if anybody has, I've done sessions specifically on creating both tabular models in Visual Studio and also Power Pivot content. If anyone has questions about some of the specifics of creating KPIs or building Power Pivot content in Excel or even DAX formulas, that's a session in itself. Didn't want to get too deep into any area here, but the point is that while Power Pivot allows you to point to different data sources and create pivot tables and pivot charts pretty easily, oftentimes if you want to create more complicated calculations or KPIs, you're going to have to write a little bit of code. So even with a tool that's supposed to be maybe an order of degree simpler than analysis services, sometimes some code has to be written. And again, there's a whole session itself just on this. So if anybody has questions about how to create some of this, again, feel free to if you have a question here, if you want to send me an email afterwards, feel free to do so.
I actually have 3 more questions, Kevin, that came in.
Okay.
All right. First is, I work for a medical group. How secure is this process?
Good question. The portal that is up in the Office 365 site, I can tab back over here. The portal has capabilities to set up both user profiles and user access based upon sign information. As a matter of fact, when I loaded these sites at the very beginning of the demonstration, I had to provide a username and a user password in order to be able to get in. That's something that's something that Microsoft has taken some very specific provide some very specific attention to in the last couple of years, because that was a big question when data and content was made available in the cloud. Is what was the security going to be like? And that's something Microsoft has obviously paid a lot of attention to as they built SQL Azure and SQL databases in Windows Azure, and also they've been placing a lot of attention to it. If anything dealing with specific security algorithms or anything more specific than that, that would be something that would probably be best to post on MSDN. I'm not familiar with some of the specific algorithms that they might be using, but they've obviously, if you follow the press and the functionality they've been putting in this, they've obviously made security a priority.
Okay. All right. Next one is, but it is not available in SharePoint 2013, only in the cloud version? Guess it's a question.
Well, okay, if you're using, if you're a company that is using SharePoint 2013 Enterprise, then everything that I've covered here, you can push up into a SharePoint 2013 site collection if you're running 2013 on your within your corporate intranet. This is basically taking Office 365 is essentially taking a subset of SharePoint 2013, certainly not all of it, but a subset of it that is focused specifically on some of these Excel add-ins and making them available up in the cloud. Now, by the way, there are other capabilities in Office 365 aside from just the ability to render Excel content using these Power BI add-ins. You have email capabilities, you have calendar capabilities, you have some logging and social network capabilities that are available in Office 365. You obviously have SkyDrive that's available, so that there's other modules that are available in addition to the ability to render BI content. But obviously, if you're using SharePoint 2013 in a corporate intranet setting, you're likely going to continue to use that as opposed to Office 365. This is really more geared towards those who really haven't gotten into SharePoint and either for licensing reasons or just because they don't want to, they want to have a lower footprint of what they have to manage. This is going to be more attractive for them.
Okay. I have two questions from the same person, so I'm going to ask them at the same time. What is the feasibility of building a dashboard by using Power BI and Office 365? And the second one is it possible to connect Power BI app to regular SharePoint site and not Office? You just answered that one, the second one. I'll let you go back to the first one. Yeah.
Yeah. The first one. Can you create dashboards? Yes, you can. Again, some of the links that I've had back in the slide deck actually show examples where people are using Power View in particular to build dashboards. Coming back to Excel here, and again, any Power View full-blown Power View demonstration that you take a look at will probably cover this. What many people do is within a Power View report, they'll basically split the screen up. Right now, I simply have one visualization here. I just have one chart. You can split the screen up into multiple segments where one might be a grid, the other might be a report, and two might be charts, and utilize that as your dashboard. So when you think about a dashboard, a dashboard is really web parts under the hood where you're taking segments of the screen and devoting it to specific visualizations, whether it's a trend chart or a grid with some drill down capabilities or whatever. Well, Power View allows you on this one design surface to set up multiple charts that can all respond to the same filter or the same tile here. So the short answer is not only yes, can you use things like Power View as the basis for some dashboarding visualization. Not only can you do it, there are people who are doing it. The thing about Power View is because it is still relatively new. If you were to do, just hypothetically, if you did Google searches on, or any kind of web searches on Power View 9 months ago, and you do searches today, you're going to see a lot more information about different presentations and different videos of how people are using Power View. And so there are more ideas that are literally surfacing, if not daily, weekly, on different discoveries, different ways that people are looking at Power View, and that's where a lot of the inspiration is coming from. So if a person is really interested in seeing how people are using Power View, there are a lot of public demos that are out there. You do have to do a little bit of searching sometimes, but there are a lot of public demos that people have put up on YouTube or on MSDN or whatever that demonstrate how they're using Power View, and some pretty creative solutions out there. I know from my own perspective, when I first saw Power View, my initial reaction was, oh, okay, another visualization tool. But then I've seen some of the different demos that are out there, and people have put together some pretty creative things. And the nice thing is they're sharing how they're putting these together so that other people can follow suit. So not only can you do it, there are people who are doing it now.
Okay.
And if I and just to jump on, just to add on to that, if you're using SharePoint 2013 in a corporate intranet setting, you can bring in any of this content. As an example, I mentioned one of my favorite tools is Performance Point Services, because that's almost like the special glue that allows you to bring in content from Excel services, from reporting services, from Power View. Well, you can publish these up to SharePoint, and they obviously have their own URL, their own web page, and then bring them into a SharePoint dashboard. So even if you're using SharePoint 2013, you have different options for bringing this under one SharePoint dashboard umbrella. So there are different options depending upon what tools you're already using.
Okay. All right. One final question. The $20 a month. Would
Yes.
this be in addition to the $15 a month for Office 365?
That is a good question. Let me.
And the one thing that I realized through this is you really need to get the correct version of Office 365 when you're making your purchase.
Yeah, that is true. As a
Because
matter of fact,
I had gotten the Home Professional version instead of the Professional version, and there is a definite difference in the usability of Power BI.
that is an excellent point. I'm really glad you brought that up. Yeah, the Home Edition is obviously going to be much more limited in terms of functionality. So that one is for the context of what we're talking about here. You definitely want to avoid that particular version. I'll try to answer the question here. I signed out. I'm going to sign back in and start to create one. So let me go sign up for this again. And first of all, I'll go through here and I'll do the try now, but I won't sign up for it fully. You have the option at the time that you sign up for this, for which trial that you want. So there's an option. It actually is going to be an option after you sign up here, but there's an option for which trial that you want, and the one that you want, if you're doing this today, the one that you'll want is going to be the Office 365 Enterprise E3 trial. That's the one that you're going to want, because that's the one that allows you, that gives you the sort of the stripped down version of SharePoint that allows you to push Excel content up into the cloud. The one that you want to avoid for this context is going to be the Home Edition. Now, as far as the $20 on top of the $15, sadly I don't know the answer to that. If that person, if we've got their name and their email address, I can see if I can find out. Off the top of my head, I don't know the answer to that. I wouldn't even take a guess if the answer is yes, it's on top, or no. I'd have to find out. If we can get that person's name and contact information, I can try to find out.
I will do that. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kevin. This is a wealth of information, and it's great to have your time, even for an hour, to do this great presentation.
Okay, thank you. And again, if anyone has any questions, you feel free to contact myself or Melissa. And thanks everybody for attending.
Have a good one.
Okay, you too. Thanks. So long. Bye.